Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Pathfinder Civil Services Academy. Today we have a very important topic, that is tariff. What is tariff? What are its types? And in recent times we have seen the impact of and the role of tariffs in the foreign relations, and as America has imposed tariffs on various countries including India, how it shapes the economies across the world. We will discuss it in very brief manner. So first, what is tariff? Tariff is a tax imposed by the government on imports and exports of goods and services. Anything which is imported from any other country, a tax is levied on that. Anything which is exported to any other country, a tax is levied on that. And these taxes are levied by the government. Sometimes taxes are levied on exports, sometimes taxes are levied on imports because of various purposes, sometimes to protect the indigenous industries or indigenous products from foreign products, sometimes to actually capitalize the revenue. So first, there are two types of taxes, two types of tariffs. One is on the basis of calculation, another on the basis of purpose. On the basis of calculation, there are three types of tariffs. One is specific tariff. जब tariff levy किया जाता है on the basis of units of products. For example, 100 rupees on 5 quintal of rice. That is called as specific tariff. It's also called as unit-based tax. Second is ad valorem tax. It is a tax or a tariff levied on the value of product. For example, 5% on the product, 5% on a car, 5% on a BMW car. So specific tax, when there's a tax on the basis of, is levied on the unit, and ad valorem tax when there's a tax on the value of product. Then there is another one, that is compound tariff, which is a mix of both specific tax, specific tariff, as well as ad valorem tax. Now coming to the second one, based on purpose. The purpose, there are various kinds of tariffs. Particularly these tariffs are levied on, imposed on the goods imported from different countries. First one is countervailing duty or countervailing tariff. There is a general tariff, general import duty imposed on the imported goods from various countries. But when a country feels that the exporting country encourages its goods to be imported, to be exported in a particular country. For example, if India feels that America is encouraging its exported goods into the India, then India, along with the general tariff, imposes extra tariff on that product, which is called as countervailing, to actually counter those imported goods from the USA, which is being encouraged by its government. Now, second is anti-dumping. Anti-dumping tariff is a unique tariff. In recent times, it has gained recognition across the countries. When some country actually exports its goods and sells its goods in another country at the price lower than the price of its origin in original country, it is called as dumping. For example, China dumps its products in India at a very low price. So India has to actually impose tax on those goods which are being dumped by the China into India at a very low price compared to what is it sold in, at what rate it is sold in China. So such tariff is called as anti-dumping. Third one is retaliatory. For example, recently America has imposed 25% tariff on Indian imports. Then again, it has imposed 25% tariff on Indian imports. So if India, in retaliation with that imposed tariff, will retaliate the tariff on American imports here in India, or American exports here in India, that is called as retaliatory tariff. Now, the actual context of this topic is with related to current development. So first and foremost, we would go to the very basic and very important concept with regard to the exports, that is generalized system of preferences. What is this? What is its background? And what were its implications? What were its positive impacts and the negative impacts? It was a method established under UNCTAD and allowed by the WTO, which is World Trade Organization. And this generalized system of preferences was actually a program to promote economic growth in developing countries. How? It allowed the developing countries to export its products in developed countries. For example, India is a developing country, Bangladesh is a developing country. So this system, this program allowed India to export its products to the developed countries like America, Japan, Australia, Canada, Russia, European Union countries. It was a system, it was established under UNCTAD, and it was allowed by the WTO because this was an exception to a very unique principle which is called as most favored nation principle. Most favored nation principle, it is a principle established by the WTO where a country, if it gives leverage to some country with respect to trade, if it has to give leverage to some country with respect to trade, it needs to give that leverage to each and every member of the WTO as well. But this was an exception. What was actually the context in this program? That those countries which allowed the products from the developing countries into their country were called as donor countries. For example, there were 5 specific donor countries, 6 specific: US, European Union, Japan, Canada, Australia, and Russia. It allowed the products from India into their country. Hence, it promoted the growth of Indian economy. So that was the motto of this generalized system of preferences, GSP. But unfortunately, in 2018, USA withdrew from this program. So it affected Indian market, it affected India's GDP. Back in 2018, what happened? If we talk about the current development with respect to the tariffs, US tariff on India, there has been a history of India-US economic relationship. In 2018, US imposed a tariff on India's steel and aluminium, the 2 main production of India's which were exported to the America. US imposed tariff, and in 2019, US withdrew India's GSP. It is the actually discretion of a donor country. It is the discretion of donor country to which country it will give GSP and to which product it will give GSP. India was one of those countries to which USA had given the GSP, and there were few products to which it has given access. Similarly, Bangladesh was there, Vietnam was there, and other some developing countries were there. But with respect to India, India withdrew GSP status. Hence, it affected India's GDP, it affected India's export flow, it affected India's capital inflow. So India, in retaliation, imposed tariffs on 28 US products then, including almond, apples, and walnuts. It was back in 2019. Now, again in 2025, what happened? After May, USA first imposed tariffs of 25%. Then again, it imposed tariff of 25%, which led to the total tariff of 50%. Now, what will happen? Actually, it will reduce India's competitiveness of exports because Indian products will become costlier. As Indian products which are to be exported to the US will become costlier, it becomes less attractive to the American buyers. So India's export with respect to the America will reduce. So those products which were produced for exporting to the America will get least production. Second, buyers in USA will shift to other markets like Bangladesh, like Vietnam, because they provide cheaper exports, cheaper products to the American market. While as if USA has imposed tariff on Indian products, obviously India will increase the price of its products which has to be exported to the US. So subsequently, the Indian export products will get costlier and it will reduce its buyers in America. And American market will shift towards other developing or other countries. Second, this will create pressure on India's GDP. Approximately 20% of India's GDP is dependent on export. So it will create pressure on that GDP as well. Third, it has created a diplomatic tension between USA and India. I'm telling you about the impact of US tariffs on India. Now come to the a very important sector, which is MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises. It is as of now a backbone of India's merchandise, India's manufacturing or India's production. It actually accounts 30% of India's GDP. It accounts 45% of India's total exports, and it employs around more than 110 million people. Now you can imagine those products like leather, jackets, those products like petroleum products, those products which are produced in these MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. And those products has to be exported to the America because America is one of the largest markets of Indian MSME products. If the tariff impacts that MSME, it will ultimately reduce the export. It will reduce the export competitiveness because then the other markets will come into play with respect to the America. It will tight cash flow. You are getting cash inflows by exporting your products. Now that will get reduced and ultimately it will reduce jobs. It will actually lose jobs in the MSME sector, which will ultimately do reduction in the production and ultimately it will reduce the economic growth. Now coming to the way forward. Now what is the way forward for India? If not America, then who? There are various markets where India can access to. One of the major market is Middle East. You have a huge population which can consume the Indian products is Middle East. You have Qatar, you have UAE, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Iran, you have Iraq. So India can shift its market exports towards the UAE. Africa is one of the good markets for Indian exports and particularly for this MSMEs. And third one, European Union. These are the export markets where you can export your products, if not America. Then there is another way forward, that is Atmanirbhar. India has to be self-reliant and it should push for self-reliance and domestic supply chain development. Just produce the goods and distribute it domestically and create a development chain so that you will not be dependent on some other country. If the America persists with this tariff, then India has to find a new approach, new way forwards with respect to its products. It has a good access to other countries, like it can approach its neighboring countries, including Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, with whom we have a good relationship. It can also get access to the Southeast Asian nations. So there are various way forwards, but there needs to be a very good economic policy with respect to overcome this tariff impact. So this was a brief detail about the tariff, the role of tariff and types of tariffs, and impact of US tariff on India's economy and particularly India's MSME. Thank you very much.